All right, so you bought yourself a Piaggio Ciao off of Facebook Marketplace and it doesn't run. Where do you start? Well, for one, this one has a broken kickstand. So I need to be able to flip the bike over to repair that, and then the bike has to roll. So I need to check to see if these tubes will hold air and to see what kind of shape the tires are in. So first thing I'm gonna do is check and see if there's any gas in it. So let's see if there's any gas in the tank. Okay, yeah, I can hear a little bit of gas slogging around in there. So I think what we're gonna have to do is drain the gas out so we can flip the bike upside down and repair the kickstand. So gas will be coming out. Okay, so I have taken out the center foot plate, the side panel, the center foot plate bracket holder, the carburetor, and the air box are all out. So I have the fuel line freed up right here. I'm turning it on. I don't have any flow. I can hear gas in it, so I might just have to undo it here and drip it down into a bucket or something. So I'm gonna get a wrench and see about taking the fuel tap off. All right, so I got the fuel tap off, and I got the, I don't know, kerosene or gasoline that they had in there all drained out. And then here's something I've never seen before. I hear there's some sort of a sleeve that they had put to go on the inside. So I have to kind of try to pry what I can of that out of there. Or I can get a drill bit probably the size of this opening and kind of put it through there to clean that up. But I think that was part of the tap, which I had never seen one that went inside of the fuel tap like that before. So I got this drained out. Might rinse it out. I think I'm gonna try to get that out first, and then I'm going to flip it over and fix that kickstand. All right, I got the bike upside down, and then I was able to hammer out those little aluminum pieces to the inside, which I'll just have to vacuum out or try to rinse it out from the inside, or I'll get it out. So over here to the kickstand, there's a pin that I have to get out right there. And I either have to take it out this side or this side over here, which the muffler's in the way. So I am going to remove the muffler now. All right, so I got the muffler off, but now I'm thinking to be able to get this bolt, at least to hammer it out to this side or hammer it from this side out, I'm going to have to take off the pedals and the chain. So I'm going to remove those now. All right, so to remove this, just basically need to pry out this piece right here, and then I'm going to hammer that pin out through that side. Okay, so I got the old kickstand off and the new kickstand on. So we're ready to flip it back over and check the tire pressure. All right, now I'm gonna put some air in the tires. I mean, I know these tires aren't good because you can see the dry cracking right there in them, but if the tubes are at least good, then I can get it to roll, or when I get the engine going, I can at least stand on it and pedal start it. So let's see if the tires will hold any air. I won't make you watch this, I will come back to this. Okay, so amazingly enough, or maybe not amazingly enough, both tires are holding air, even though that the outer part of the tire is somewhat dry cracked. The tubes are still good, so that's a good sign, even on the back one. So we've got our air in tires, and we got our kickstand on. Oh, that's not engaging. So it looks like it's stuck in bicycle. There we go. Bicycle mode. Oh, not in bicycle mode. That seems that the engine is seized. I didn't, oh no. It's spinning a little bit. Why is this jammed up? That might be something going on inside there. So we will figure out what's next. Okay, I think the next step I'm gonna take is to remove the speedometer. This one's got a speedometer in it, but we never use these. I usually put a cap on them, and we have phone holders with speedometers that we can use on our phone and GPS. So the speedometer in the top, I always feel that if this isn't hooked up quite right, that it could be a little bit of a drag on the wheel. Could slow the wheel down. So I'm taking the speedometer off, and I'll put a cover on it, like this one. Basically, once that comes off, this cover will go on top of there. And then, I don't know, I guess I can sell the speedometer on eBay if there's somebody out there that wants it, but I think they're a little obsolete these days. You probably know how fast your bike goes. Also on these bikes, these toolboxes with the covers can be pretty hard to find. This one's in pretty good shape. It's got a busted tab at the bottom, but it's pretty clean. This one has to stay on the bike for the turn signals because this is where the battery goes. But usually I take the toolbox side off and I keep them because they are hard to find. So I have a small collection of them, and a couple back here as well too. Eventually I'm going to sell these on eBay, so visit my eBay store. Okay, so the speedometer is off, and got it off down here. So right here, there was a reflector that was right there. Didn't really care for that, took it off, and the toolbox is off. So, but when I was taking the speedometer off, I was looking at this headlight bracket, and it looks like the headlight is back a little further, and it looks like this is a non-Piaggio headlight bracket. So that might be something that they fabricated themselves or had to make something else fit. It looks like it's kind of cutting into some wires up there. But I have, for the gooseneck, this is a gooseneck, and then it has ox bars, the way they shape out. Not all really have that kind of a shape. But I have the correct bracket that fits on there, but I don't know if I want to remove this bolt, because this could be a whole headache to get out for the cone that goes down. Looks like somebody has raised it up too, and my horn is missing as well. So yeah, I think I'm going to take that out to put this bracket on. So let's see how this goes. All right, so I've got the new correct headlight bracket on there, as you can see, and it pushes the headlight forward a little more, like what I'm used to seeing. I wasn't used to seeing it recessed back in this area, more that it comes forward in the handlebars. And then we have our handy dandy little Okay, so next I'm gonna take off, since all the cables, the throttle cable's not even there, it's missing its slide, there's a screw that goes under there. This is a brake switch. I'm not gonna use these. This is kind of what I consider a design flaw for the Chows, is that it has a negative ground wire that comes out with the ignition wire, this one right here. And this one goes up, snakes through the entire bike, goes into this brake switch, goes over from this brake switch to this brake switch, goes all the way back through the body to the tail light, and basically what it does is completes the negative ground to the engine. And when you push on the brake handles, it makes it have the double lights, so this will run as a running light, and then when you brake, it gets even brighter. But the thing is, if the bulb is burned out, then your bike won't start because it doesn't complete the negative ground. So basically what I do, I don't know if I'm gonna take this engine out of the bike yet or not, but just take this wire off and attach it to a ground, or attach it to the engine. You could even put a little piece on it and put it under this screw here. But as long as this is making its connection to the engine, you can remove all the brake wires. This just has, and you can even do it on the inside. So as brittle as that kind of feels, I might pull the engine out and look at the wires, look it over, maybe open up the intakes and the ports, maybe make it a little bit quicker for whoever buys this bike after me. But yeah, this is the brake switches. It's an American deal. I don't like them. These are coming out and getting thrown away. All right, so I've gone ahead and pulled the engine, and I pulled the external ignition coil, and I'm taking the back wheel off. This is something to do with a lot of these bikes. I really don't like this bar right here. This thing, the fender is supported at the top with this bracket, but it's hard to get the tire out with that there, and they bend. If you can see, this one's got a bend to it. So what I usually do is cut these off right here, throw that away, and then I cut the fender down a little bit as well too, just so if you need to take the tire out to change it in a fix, it's easier to slide out. Whereas now you have to lift the bike to get the tire out. So that's what I'm gonna do now. I use a reciprocating saw, cut this side, cut that side, cut this bottom, take the tire off first so you don't cut the tire. There we go. So using a reciprocating saw with a metal blade, I cut off this lower section and then cut that side and then this side over as well. So it'll just be the floating fender back here, a little shorter, a little sportier. All right, so here we are, day 2 of the Piaggio Ciao rebuild. So I rinsed out the tank and it looks pretty good. We're clear here. And then I cut the rear fender, so it's good. So next up, we've got the rear transmission is looking pretty filthy and overflowing with some stuff. So I think we're going to take this apart and clean it and probably change that gasket because it looks like it is leaking a little bit. All right, so I got this out, got it cleaned up, and it actually doesn't look that bad. I think the gasket in some places looks a little newer. So it might have been changed. I think if anything, they just overflowed it here where the overflow oil comes out, because it would be sitting in this position here. So you can see it's pretty wet there, but I'm not gonna open that if I don't have to. I think it just has too much oil in it. Eventually it'll leak out as far as it needs to. So I'm just gonna put the rear wheel back together and put it back on the bike. And then do the front wheel, which is a different science. Actually, I take that back. I think before I put this wheel on, I kind of tested it with this Brillo pad, and man, it is really shining that rim up really good. So I think what I'm gonna do is just take maybe another half hour, an hour, and go through and clean this rim up, because gosh, that almost looks brand new, just with Brillo pad and a little water. And so I'll get back when that's clean. So these things actually cleaned up pretty darn good. I don't know if you can see it in the light the dual light that I have here, but pretty much got them all cleaned up. I didn't do much for the spokes. Might just try to pressure wash those. They got some crud on them, but the rims are looking pretty darn nice now. This tire actually, back tire, isn't in too bad a shape. So maybe I can just find a replacement for that front tire. We shall see. And then I was pretty much right with this, that someone had overflowed it. I think you're only supposed to fill to that fill bolt right there. You don't really need to fill the whole rear transmission with oil. So I got it tipped forward, kind of draining out, but I don't think there was a problem with the gasket or the seal. I think it was basically, it was just overfilled and coming back out. All right, so I got both wheels cleaned up and I'm ready to put the back wheel on, but there's a bracket on here that holds the tail lights, this thing here, and it's broke on this side right there. So luckily enough, I have this very rare random bracket. So we're gonna switch those out and take the old one off, put the new one on, because there's some screws here and here. All right, so I got the new bracket put on and the old one off. These things are kind of hard to come by. I don't know if maybe I can get this one welded back together or not, but Be nice to have a spare one just in case next time I need it. So I'm gonna call it a day and we'll resume tomorrow. I think I'm gonna take off the front wheel and check the bearings and re-grease them. All right, so I got the wheel off and it looks like the loose ball bearings are pretty dry. So I'm gonna pack some marine grease in there, re-grease them. It doesn't look like anything's really wrong with it. Just gotta be careful because when you lift this, they tend to just fall right out. There they go. Yeah, I think maybe there's issues over there. So I'm going to clean that, clean the ball bearings, repack the grease, put the axle rod back in, and then change this tire. And then if you're doing this, make sure you do it like on a pretty flat, clean surface, because if those ball bearings fall out, you'll have to chase them. And that's not always too fun. This may be worth noting that there are 10 ball bearings per side of the wheel. So 10 on this side, 10 on the other side. And this one looks like mostly just kind of crudded up in there. So I'm gonna clean all that out and put some fresh grease in. Hopefully that's the reason why it wasn't rolling very smooth. All right, so I got the bearings removed and repacked. I used this thick grease that I get from Harbor Freight. So they're in there, they're good. It's a lot smoother. So I just need to put the brake plate back on after clean it up a little bit. And then change the tires next. All right, so I got the old tire off and I have an old slightly used tire on this spare rear that I have. So I'm going to take the slightly used tire and put it on the front, and then it's going back on the bike. All right, so the bearings are greased and the new used tire is on, getting ready to reinstall it on the bike. And now the bike tire is reinstalled. Just repaired the throttle slide. I was missing that little slide part and that screw. This one doesn't have the spring on it, so it might be the one that just have enough tension on it that it recoils on its own. And then I have a spare front brake cable and I had a spare throttle cable. So we're putting those on the bike now. All right, here we are. I believe it is day 4. So I put all of the turn signal lights on. I've got the key, the headlight cover, front wheel is clean, the bearings are greased, brakes reinstalled, new used tire is on. Got the turn signals on the back, and I've got a tail light for this one I'm gonna put on later today. So we're basically down to the mechanics of the bike. I've got the engine out right here, which actually seems to be in pretty good shape. Looks like there's a little bit of staining on the bottom here, but I don't know if that's because we got a leak. I kind of hate to clean it up or to take it apart to clean it up if it's holding compression and running good, but looks like we got a bunch of crud here by where the exhaust is. So I'm gonna see if it'll still spark, and then I'm gonna check the gaskets and possibly clean it up a little bit before I put it back in the bike. Okay, so I got a little rig set up here. I've got the engine ground wire touching the engine here. I've got the external CDI coil touching the engine here, or attached to the engine here, and then I have the ignition wire touching that, going up. So as long as this is touching anywhere, making contact with the engine, that's how we can test to see if we have spark. So I've got a got good spark. So we've got good spark, so I don't think we necessarily need to take this engine apart to service it. The only thing I would do would open it up to open up the intakes and the ports, but since this is just a flip bike, I think I'm just going to leave it as is, maybe clean it up a little bit, and then put it in the bike and test it, because it should be ready to go. I think the clutch is in decent shape, so should have this bike running soon. Okay, so I did an external hookup of the external engine ignition negative wire, so I just kind of put that on. So as long as this wire is touching the body, it should start. This one goes to the engine coil. So I guess I can put the bike back together now and give it a test. All right, so I put the engine back in and I got it running, but it's not really idling. Anytime I put on the back brake, the engine dies. The kill switch isn't working. I haven't tried the turn signals yet, but it seems like as soon as I apply the back brake, it just dies. So it looks like the engine's having a little bit of suction problems, so we'll have to take it back out and open it up and probably redo the gaskets. So that will be next, but at least we got some progress. We got to fire it up. The headlight wasn't working, the tail light, so I got to figure that out as well too. All right, so I had an old battery. It may or may not be good. I hooked it up. It should operate the turn signals even if the bike isn't running, but I don't know. The wiring looks all good, but this kill switch didn't work, the headlight didn't come on, or the tail light, so there might be something in there that I need to take a look at. It looks to all be hooked up correctly. Unless we've got a fuse out or something, so yeah, gotta check out some electrical now. All right, here we go, day 5. Got a delivery from Treatland. So I believe the parts that are in this are the push pins for the side here and there, or I guess I had the push pins, I need the springs. And then I got a sticker to go on the box that is missing right here. And I got a new battery. Yeah, so we're gonna take this battery out, put the new one on the charger. And then also I'm gonna pull the engine, and I think that's as far as I'm gonna go with it today. Might as well pull the engine out. I think the reason why the bike was dying was because maybe a broken ring, piston ring. So we're gonna take it out, rebuild the engine, redo the gaskets, and open up the intakes so it can maybe take off a little quicker at the start. I don't know if I'm gonna film all that. There's plenty of YouTube videos showing how to do that. We'll see once I get it out, but that's the goal for today. Okay, so I got the springs put on the push pins, and those are put in. This one's kind of a repair, but I got it to work. And then next would be using some rubber cement to put that guy back in place. And then at some point I'm going to repair this. This isn't too hard to fix. And then this is the battery that goes and replaces the exact same battery that is in here right now. Whoa, so that's it. All right, I've got to catch that, so I'm turning the camera off. All right, so the engine is out. You can remember my somewhat shoddy negative ground wire grounding here. You know, I think I'm just gonna disassemble the entire engine. So that's where we're going now. All right, for the most part, it looks pretty clean in here, but I do see an area right here. It looks like maybe the seal is starting to fail. So we're gonna go ahead and keep going on this one. But that might be where the air suction problem is coming from. All right, so far I'd gotten to the piston, but we've got a lot of burning up here. And it looks like you can kind of see there was no head gasket, so I think that this was kind of leaking out through here. You can see the staining a little bit where it had been going off at. But I'm about to ready to pull this forward and see what kind of deal we got going on with the piston. So at least there's a gasket on this part, which it felt pretty good. And there's one ring. So, all right, I'm gonna set the phone down, take a look at this, come back. Okay, so the piston rings are actually in pretty good shape. You just got so much crud on the head that I think that might have been somewhat preventative of it, and maybe a little leaking down through here. There was an area on the gasket that was really kind of burned up where it looked like oil had gone through that part at some point. So I think I'm going to clean it up. The bearings seem good, so I don't really need to separate the case, but I want to open up the intake here and here, and that's almost easier to do when the cases are separated. So I just got to check and make sure I got another engine gasket, and then I'm going to pop this apart and inspect the bearings. All right, so I got it all apart. Everything looks pretty good. I mean, the crank looks good, the bearings are decent. There's kind of some burning up in this area, and it looks like the piston does have some scorch marks on it. A little bit of burning in this area too. So I think just getting extra oxygen flowing around it, not necessarily from the piston rings, but from the piston itself. That would explain all the buildup and the lack of the gasket at the head. So I'm calling it a day right now, but basically I'm going to clean all this up. I might even have a better piston and cylinder, so I've changed these out so often that I may not have to clean these. I could just put a different one on it that I have here already. So that will be next, is to rebuild the engine and put it back together, probably tomorrow. All right, so I went through and cleaned up the engine parts. I found a better piston. Could probably clean that one up and it'd be all right, but it looks like it's scorched, so figured I would just go with this one. That looks like it's in a bit better shape. Cleaned up the flywheel, the cylinder, the head. Opened up the make it go fast part and then open up the carb intake here, as you can see, and then open it up back here, and a little bit at the crank in this corner. So should have a little more acceleration off the start. I'm gonna call it a day with this. Probably come out, assemble the engine, put it back in the bike tomorrow. And then I have the battery on the trickle charger, so we can try the lights here soon. So fingers crossed they work. Okay, so getting this back together, I have attached the external ground wire inside of the engine right here. And then you really can't see the other one. The external ignition wire, I'll show you in a second. And then I've set the timing, which is basically, the timing is the gap. And this is the timing. Can you see it? There we go. 0.015 or 0.38 millimeter. So basically that's what this has to be. And then I use a 10 millimeter wrench to spin it. And compression's good. There's where it opens. So, all right, we're gonna put it back together. Oh, I'll show you the wire. Set of the wire right here. I should have done it longer. I guess I'll probably just add an extension onto it because it still has to go to the external. Yeah, so that's together. So I got it running, but I don't have the turn signals running and the headlight or the tail light isn't coming on. So I gotta get on the inside here, figure that out. But at least the engine doesn't stop when I apply the rear brake. And it's got some decent acceleration now. Just needs to run for a bit. Gonna figure out the lights. All right, so just down to getting the lights working now. The engine sounded like it was running okay. This is supposed to be a kill switch, but it doesn't do anything. So I think someone has came in here and rewired this somehow, or just somehow the switch is failing. When I first opened this up, this screw was missing. So I had a couple spare ones. I took the screw out, put it in, and still nothing. But most of the other ones that I see, there's two different styles of these chipboard type things. And I have one other one here that shows that the yellow wires are where the gray wires are. And then in the back, the gray wires are where the yellow wire is. So I think someone has switched the wires around on this one, and that this one is still wired correctly. So I may switch them around. I have the schematics somewhere. I'm gonna go look them up. Maybe that can help me. All right, so the Piaggio Ciao turn signals are good. basically I didn't change anything in the headlight. It was all wired correctly. If anything, I kind of took some of the connections out, cleaned them up a little bit, put them back in. But if you get a Ciao that the turn signals aren't working, like it has them on it, you go through the whole process of putting the battery on, and usually everything inside here is hooked up correctly. It's mostly what's done back here. Sometimes you'll get a little bit of corrosion as well too. So the key to me actually getting this going was to take off this cover, don't let my battery fall. Okay, there's a fuse in here, so me kind of jingling that alive. Then basically I had a couple of these blinker units, so I took the one that was on here off because it wasn't working, tried this one, and once I used this one, everything kind of came on. So if you get one that the turn signals aren't working, first get a battery fully charged, put it in, make sure this fuse is good, and if you don't have anything, then track down a newer one of these. I think Treatland carries them. 6 volt, 42 watt, and this is actually what makes the turn signals blink. You can actually hear it. It's like a little heartbeat. You can kind of feel it. There's a little bunk, 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 bunk. All right, well, that's a wrap. The purple Ciao is complete.